Hey everyone, it's Josh. I'm going to walk you through an example similar to the final. I feel if we were in class, this would be much easier to explain and the rules would be quite simpler. But as you found out in the discussion boards, oftentimes writing math is the challenging part. Um, so, definitely a unique final. Hopefully, you enjoy it, have a little fun with it. Let's check it out. So, we're playing a little game, and what I'm asking for is you to come up with a winning strategy. How you're going to present that is completely up to you. Um, I'm doing a PowerPoint just to demonstrate, how it works. But basically, my example, there will be 10 chips in a pile. Yours will have, I don't remember the numbers, different numbers for sure. There will still be two players. I mean, it'd be easier to kind of practice and analyze and develop a strategy with two, but you could, play with one and act like you're person one, person two. In this example, you're only allowed to take one or two chips. Of course, you alternate turns. Player one goes, they take one or two chips, and player two. And the player to remove the last chip wins. All right, so let's check out an example. Okay, so 10 chips here, right? Not the greatest with technology. I'm sure I could have made something where it highlight which player is up. But we're starting with player one. Let's just decide they take two, right? Like, just playing around. I don't really know how to win yet besides pulling the last chip. So player one decides to take two chips. Now, this is a community pile. I'm just kind of leaving it, to the left to show it was player one's turn. They took two chips. Okay. Player two, again, they're just kind of guessing. Maybe they decide a strategy to mimic what player one does. So they decide also to take two chips. Maybe player one switches it up now, right? They're like, yeah, I'll take one. And player two, okay, I'm going to stick with my strategy by taking one. Now, at this point, I think they start to think a little bit more about the end result, right? Like, if I took two chips here, player two wins. They could take two and they're done. If I take one chip, however, player two, they're not locked in a win. So let's do that. Player one takes a chip. Now player two faces a similar situation. Okay, if they take one, player two can take both chips and they win. If they take two chips, player one takes the last chip and they wins. Deadlocked, right? Almost like you get doubled up in tic-tac-toe. There's nothing you can do. You're going to lose. So it doesn't matter at this point. Player two takes two, and player one takes the last chip and they win. Well, I mean, maybe player one had a strategy. Maybe stick with that. I mean, I don't know. Let's just play another game and see if we get different results. Maybe player two, it's possible to win. Not sure. I don't think one game is enough to analyze yet, right? So, game number two. Player one liked that strategy. They took two chips, so let's do it again. Player two, however, is like, well, I mimicked him last time, right, or her, and I didn't win, so I'm going to take one. Switches it up a little. Player one, last time they took one on their second turn, and they ended up winning. So now, now what? I don't know. Take one or two. Again, I mean, played a few times, see? Let's just say they decided to take two. Now player two's thinking about this a bit. Right? They lost last time. So let's analyze it a bit further. They took one. They're kind of back to that situation they were in last time where they were leaving player one with four chips and they lost. So let's try two. Okay. Now player one is stuck with an automatic loss, right? Playing tic-tac-toe, I can't do anything, I'm going to lose. If I take one, player two wins. If I take two, player two wins. So at this point, it really doesn't matter. They already see they're at a loss unless player two really just spaced out, right? I mean, could happen. But player two notices there are two chips. They take them, and now they're the winner. Well, we had player one win once, player two win once. Like, is there a sound strategy to always have an advantage as player one or player two? I don't know. I think maybe another trial game would help. Start exploring this. But let's look at it differently. Let's analyze this. So the questions in the final are similar to this, and it's a very similar game. Just more chips and different rules. Right? Like one of them you could take one chip, two chips, or four chips. One of them I believe is one, two, or three. So it's going to take, some trial and error, some guesswork, and I'm going to show you a sound strategy that I have found to work in a game like this. You're more than welcome to use it. I'm not looking for uniqueness. What I'm looking for is how well you explain your strategy, the winning strategy, hopefully, but not all of the grade is about the correct answer. A lot of it has to do with how well you interpret the game and explain it to somebody else, and then developing a winning strategy, if one exists. I mean, maybe ultimately it does depend on the player and luck of the draw. Right? If two people know tic-tac-toe, we could end in a draw every single time. So my suggestion is working backwards. If I'm player one and I end with one chip, I'm going to pull it and I win, right? So therefore, what I'm saying is, if you end with one chip, that's a win. Two chips, the same thing, right? I end with two chips, I'm going to win because I'll pull them both. So chip one and chip two, if you end in that chip, you're a winner. How about chip three? Well, as we've seen in that game, on chip three, you have to take one or two, and the next opponent can win. Now, when I write win or loss, I'm really assuming both players do the next best move, right? There could be two chips on the table. Someone draws a blank, they only grab one. I mean, they just set themselves up for a loss. But theoretically, two chips on the table, you win. So if there are three, I mean, you will lose, right? Unless somebody messes up. What about four? There are four chips on the table. Well, that game we just played, if there were four chips, that person took one to set the next person up for failure. Right? They took one chip and set the player on chip three for a loss. So therefore, on chip four, if you take one chip, you will win the game. Now, from here, we just keep going, right? Fifth chip. Is that going to be a win or a loss? I mean, should you take one chip or two chips, or are you destined to lose, right? Well, if there were four chips on the table, I'm going to take two chips to put my opponent on chip number three, and they lose. So therefore, on chip five, I can pull a win. If I know what I'm doing, I can win. Right? And then keep going from there. Chip six. At chip six, can you guarantee a win? Well, if I pull one chip, I'm going to put the second player on the fifth chip, right? And they have a winning strategy now. If I pull two, I put them on chip four, and again they can win. So ultimately, if you're on the sixth chip, 6 chips left in the pile, if the other player knows what they're doing, you're going to lose. Hopefully this is making sense. Kind of keep working backwards and see, up to if when we start with a 10th chip, what should you do, right? So if there's 7 chips, I'm going to go a little quicker now. If there's 7 chips, what should we do? Well, if there were 7 chips, I'm going to pull 1 and get my opponent on the 6th chip, which I know is a loss. So therefore, we can count this 7th chip as a win, right? And the 8th chip, also a win. What would you do? Well, if there are 8 chips left, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull 2. Put my opponent on chip 6. If I know how many to pull from there on out, I can guarantee a win. 9th chip, well, it's going to be a loser. Again, if you know what you're doing, if you know how to play. Keep putting your opponent on the losing chip. I have to take 1 or 2 if I'm on chip 9, and that would put my opponent in 2 winning positions. So the final question. First chip, what do you do? Well, it's going to be a win, right? If I go first, I pull 1 chip. I put them on the 9th chip, which is a loss. From there on out, I could guarantee myself a win. So, if you know the strategy, first player can always win this game. They need to start by pulling 1 chip. Hopefully that makes sense. Maybe rewind this or test it out, right? Do the 10 chips with this winning strategy. Does it work? Hopefully I didn't make a mistake. I would pull 1 chip, and then no matter what, player 2 pulls 1 or 2, they set me up for a win. Right? I'm going to make sure I put them back to the loss every single time. Hope that makes sense, and as I said, not your typical final, but we are in a problem-solving class, and I think, developing a strategy to win a game, not that pulling chips is exciting, but then again, hey, tic-tac-toe entertained us for years as a kid, right? So, variation of tic-tac-toe, but one that I guarantee, if I go first, I will win. Cool. Good luck. If you have any questions, of course, email me. The final will be open soon. Like I said, just like this, but the rules are slightly different. Best of luck.